the Museum of High Altitude Archaeology in Salta, Argentina, complete with a state-of-the-art cryopreservation facility. This building was constructed in 2004 to house what many call the most significant archaeological discovery of the 21st century. 3 bodies that shouldn't exist. Children who appear to be sleeping, but they have been frozen in time for over 500 years. The mummies were uncovered high in the Andes Mountains of South America on the brutal, wind-swept peak of Mount Lulalayaco, one of the world's highest active volcanoes. The year was 1990, and a high-altitude archaeological expedition was underway. Leading the team was explorer and anthropologist Dr. Johann Reinhard. We were at 22,100 feet. Barely breathe. Every step felt like my lungs were going to collapse. And then, one of my team members shouted. His voice, I'll never forget the sound of it. They had discovered not 1, but 3 perfectly preserved bodies. They had found the highest archaeological site on Earth. When we first saw them, we couldn't believe what we were looking at. I've been doing this for 30 years. I've excavated sites all over the world, but nothing prepares you for seeing a child who looks like they're about to wake up. Buh! The youngest was a 6-year-old boy, nicknamed El Niño, the lightning boy. Beside him sat a 15-year-old girl who would become known as La Doncella, the maiden. And next to her, a 7-year-old girl, mouth frozen open, face twisted in what appears to be a scream. She would be called La Niña del Rayo, the lightning girl. The 7-year-old when we first uncovered her face. Several of my team members had to step away. She looks terrified. Her mouth is open, like she's calling for help. And you have to remind yourself, this happened 500 years ago. But the biggest shock came when they began unwrapping the bodies. We started with La Doncella, the older girl. She was wrapped in layers of textiles. Beautiful textiles. The kind of craftsmanship you only see in museums. But when we removed them, when we saw her face, Dr. Reinhard pauses. We had to work in complete silence. It felt wrong somehow, like we might disturb her. One of the archaeologists, she actually whispered, "I'm sorry," to the girl. That's how real it felt. Her skin was still elastic. Her hair was perfect, every strand in place, even her internal organs, as they would later discover, were intact. Nothing had the impact of uncovering her face. I've worked with mummies for 3 decades. Egyptian mummies, Peruvian mummies, bog bodies from Europe, Ice Age remains from Siberia. I have never, and I mean never, seen preservation like this. Her eyelashes were visible. The tiny hairs on her arms, still there. Her fingernails, smooth and unbroken. She looked like she died yesterday. Not 500 years ago. yesterday. That's what messed with your head. You kept expecting her chest to rise, expecting her to take a breath, and preserved along with them a spectacular collection of artifacts. Miniature figurines made of gold and silver, carved with incredible detail, ceramic vessels painted with geometric designs that hadn't faded, woven textiles in colors so vibrant, reds, yellows, blacks, that they looked freshly dyed. Even food offerings that were still recognizable, dried maize, llama jerky, coca leaves. Everything was untouched, perfectly arranged. You could see where someone had placed each item with incredible care. A ceramic cup positioned just so, a figurine facing a certain direction, and then they walked away. 500 years ago, and no one had touched it since. Yeah. Someone had gone to extraordinary lengths to bring 3 children to this impossible place. But why? Who were these children? What were they doing at 22,100 feet? Higher than most commercial airplanes fly? And what happened in their final moments? Now, a team of investigators will attempt to examine these bodies, decode the artifacts, and answer the questions that have haunted archaeologists for decades. Bird. The first question, when did they die? The artifacts in the tomb reveal a stunning truth. They may look brand new, but archaeologists date them to the late 15th century. Over 500 years ago. These are remnants of the Inca Empire. The statues, the ceramics, the textiles, every single item points to the Inca civilization at its absolute height. We're talking about 1450 to 1500 AD. The empire was at its peak. Powerful, organized, massive. The Inca, famous for building Machu Picchu, dominated South America for over a century. At its height, the empire stretched from modern-day Colombia to Chile, encompassing 12 million people, but they were wiped out by Spanish conquest in the 1530s. Smallpox, warfare, enslavement. Within 40 years, the greatest empire in the Americas was destroyed, and they left no written language, no detailed records of their religious practices, no first-hand accounts of their beliefs. What we know about the Inca comes from Spanish chroniclers, Catholic priests who may have misunderstood or deliberately distorted what they saw. So these 3 children, frozen in time, are a rare window into a civilization shrouded in mystery. You have to understand, the Inca didn't write things down. They used quipus, knotted strings, for record keeping. But those mostly tracked numbers, inventories, census data. We don't have their stories in their own words. We don't have their version of events, which makes these children invaluable. Today, they are conserved under the watchful eye of Dr. Rose Angelique Corthels, a bioarchaeologist who has spent years studying them. For me, these aren't just scientific specimens. They are children. Real children who had lives, families, fears, dreams. They laughed. They cried. Big. They had favorite foods and games they liked to play. Dig. She walked slowly around La Doncella's cryogenic chamber. Part of my mission, I believe, is to tell their story, to give them a voice. Because they can't speak for themselves anymore, but their bodies are screaming with information. The three mummies attract visitors from around the world, tourists, students, researchers. But many are not prepared for what they see. When people first encounter them, especially La Doncella, they cry. I've seen grown men break down. I've seen women get physically ill. Because it's so real, the museum only displays one child at a time. The other two are kept in storage, in their cryogenic capsules. They rotate every few months. We limit exposure, light, temperature fluctuations, even the vibrations from footsteps. All of it can cause deterioration over time. So we're very careful. But even on display, behind glass, in dim lighting, the effect is overwhelming. You're not looking at a skeleton. You're not looking at bones and dust. You're looking at a child who could open her eyes at any second. That's what gets people. 3 Inca children buried 500 years ago on top of a volcano. Their bodies eerily lifelike, seated in positions that suggest they simply fell asleep. But in order to understand what really happened, investigators need to take a closer look, a much closer look. Boo! Today, we're going to remove La Doncella from her chamber. We need to do a full-body CT scan, X-rays, tissue analysis, the works. And honestly, we have no idea what we're going to find. Very rarely do curators open these cryopreservation capsules. The units are designed to keep the bodies frozen at -4 degrees Fahrenheit. Constant temperature. No fluctuation. When they do come out, time is critical. Every second counts. We have a very narrow window. Once she's out of the chamber, we're on the clock. Too much warming and we risk cellular damage. Ice crystals can rupture cell walls, so we move fast. The team assembles at dawn. Freezer units on standby. Transport vehicles ready. The bodies are so delicate that a traditional autopsy is out of the question. Cutting into them would destroy the very preservation that makes them so valuable. But a CT scan can provide a forensic look inside without causing any damage. She's leaving the museum for the first time in 15 years. We're taking all 3 children to the hospital for scanning. The technology has improved so much since they were first studied. We should be able to see things we couldn't see before. They travel in specialized freezer units, custom-built, temperature monitored every 30 seconds. The convoy leaves at night when ambient temperatures are lowest. Through the dark streets of Salta toward the hospital. Arriving just after midnight, they become the oldest patients to ever pass through the facility's CT scanner. The hospital staff, they were amazing. They cleared an entire wing for us. gave us privacy. Because this isn't just a scan. It feels like, I don't know, something sacred. Using the images captured, forensic pathologist Dr. Andrew Wilson begins to uncover their secrets. He's examined hundreds of bodies in his career. Murder victims, accident victims, unidentified remains. But this is different. One of the key questions we need to answer is, how old were these children when they died? We can determine that pretty precisely by examining their bones and teeth. They reveal age with remarkable accuracy. He studies the scans carefully, looking at El Niño, the 6-year-old boy. His first molars are fully erupted. His second molars are just beginning to emerge. That puts him at 6, maybe 7 years old. For La Niña del Rayo, the 7-year-old girl with the open mouth, the evidence is similar. Her dental development suggests 7 to 8 years. Still a very young child. And La Doncella. Measurements of her wisdom teeth and long bones reveal she was right on the cusp of adolescence. Her third molars, wisdom teeth, are present but not fully erupted. Her growth plates are beginning to fuse. She's 13, possibly 14, just entering her teenage years. Dr. Wilson stares at the images for a long time. As a pathologist, I examine children sometimes. Car accidents, drownings, rare diseases, and it's always hard. Always. Because these are lives that were just beginning. He's seen thousands of deaths, but something about these 3 children, frozen in time, gets to him. The most common causes of death in young people, even 500 years ago, would be trauma, disease, or accidents. So that's where we start looking. Perhaps these ancient children suffered a tragic accident on the mountain. A fall, a rock slide, a sudden injury. Broken bones could provide a vital clue. Wilson examines every scan, every angle, every bone. I'm looking at the skeletal structure very carefully. The skull, the ribs, the long bones of the arms and legs. I'm looking for fractures, breaks, anything that suggests impact or trauma. He zooms in on the spine, the pelvis, the small bones of the hands and feet. I can see there's no evidence of fractures, no breaks, no signs of physical trauma that could have caused death. Their skeletons are perfect. So if it wasn't an accident, what killed them? In mysterious cases like this, understanding where the bodies were found becomes crucial. And these children were found in one of the most extreme environments on Earth. The mysterious case of these children began at a location that defies belief. Mount Lilialico. Today, one of the most remote places on the planet. A 10-hour drive from the nearest town, through some of the harshest desert terrain imaginable, the Atacama Desert. We're talking about landscapes that look like Mars. No vegetation, no water. Temperatures that swing from 100 degrees Fahrenheit during the day to well below freezing at night. Modern climbers didn't even attempt to summit Ulalayako until the 1950s. It was considered too dangerous, too remote, too high. But somehow, these three children ended up here in the 1400s, before Europeans had even heard of the Americas, before anyone had invented the equipment needed to survive at that altitude. We're talking about a time before Columbus reached America, before Magellan circumnavigated the globe. These were times when reaching an altitude of 22,100 feet was considered impossible. Dr. Hollow. Wilson tries to put it in perspective. Even today, with modern equipment, Gore-Tex jackets, oxygen tanks, freeze-dried food, satellite phones, this is extreme mountaineering. People die on mountains like this every year. In 2023 alone, 11 climbers died attempting high-altitude peaks in the Andes. Hypothermia, altitude sickness, falls, avalanches. Now imagine 3 children. The oldest is 13. The youngest is 6. And they're climbing to 22,100 feet. Wearing wool and leather, no oxygen, no modern gear. Nothing. It seems impossible. Who were these children? And what were they doing at an altitude where even trained adults struggle to survive? The mountain itself may hold the key, frozen in time for 500 years. These 3 children are among the best preserved human remains ever discovered, not just in South America, anywhere. The key to their preservation lies in where they were found. Buried at the summit of a remote volcano, in conditions so extreme that decomposition essentially stopped the moment they died. The freezing process is excellent for preservation on its own. Your cells stop breaking down. Bacterial activity halts. But combine that with high altitude, where oxygen levels are 50% lower than sea level, and you have near-perfect conditions for mummification. Dr. Korthals has studied preserved remains from all over the world. But Egyptian mummies preserved through artificial mummification, chemicals and wrappings. Bog bodies from northern Europe, preserved in peat. Even Lenin's body in Moscow, preserved through constant chemical treatment. But this is different. Biz is natural preservation at a level we almost never see. The cold alone wouldn't do this. The altitude alone wouldn't do this. But together, at 22,100 feet, where it never gets above freezing, where the air is so thin that bacteria can barely survive, you get this. She gestures to La Doncella's perfectly preserved face. Her hair follicles are intact. We can see the individual pores on her skin. This is preservation that rivals anything achieved in modern laboratories. But it raises the central question. What were 3 children doing on top of a volcano? Modern-day forensic pathologists doctor. Wilson has investigated hundreds of deaths in his career. Strange deaths. Suspicious deaths. Deaths that don't make sense. His first step, always, is determining how the body got where it was found. From my experience working with law enforcement, when you find a body in an unusual location, you have to ask, did they get there on their own? Or did someone put them there? In forensic terms, this is called the primary versus secondary crime scene.
Did the person die where they were found?
Or were they moved after death? Moving bodies is very difficult. Much more difficult than people realize. Bodies are heavy, awkward, they don't cooperate. And in this case, we're talking about moving bodies up a mountain in thin air at freezing temperatures. He's consulted on cases where killers tried to dispose of bodies in remote locations.
People always underestimate how hard it is.
You see it in criminal cases all the time. Someone thinks they'll dump a body in the woods or in a lake. But it's exhausting. It takes hours, breathing, and happy darkness. It's a and at high altitude. You'd be gasping for air with every step. So the question becomes, were these children alive when they reached the summit? Or were their bodies carried up after death? I'm particularly interested in the positions the children were found in, specifically rigor mortis. The stiffening of muscles that happens after death. Pale, big. Rigor mortis sets in within 2 to 6 hours of death. It starts in the small muscles, the face, the hands, then spreads to the larger muscle groups. After 12 hours, the entire body is stiff. After 24 to 48 hours, it begins to fade. Looking at how these children are positioned, seated, with their knees drawn up, heads tilted forward, this would be very difficult to achieve if rigor mortis had already set in. You'd be fighting against stiff limbs. It would be obvious. He studies the photographs from the excavation. La Doncella, sitting with her hands folded in her lap. El Niño, head resting on his knees. These positions are too natural, too relaxed, which means they had to have been placed this way shortly after death, before rigor mortis set in, which logically means they died very close to where they were buried. The children died on or near the summit. This means they may have been alive at 22,100 feet, and that could be the key to understanding their deaths, because at this altitude, mountaineers call it the death zone. The air contains half the oxygen of sea level. Your body begins to shut down. Your brain swells. Your lungs fill with fluid. And without proper equipment, survival is measured in hours, not days. Carlos Pervigliano is a high-altitude medicine specialist. He's treated dozens of climbers suffering from extreme altitude sickness on peaks throughout the Andes. He's also recovered bodies. At 22,000 feet, your body is dying. That's not an exaggeration. Every cell in your body is starving for oxygen. Your heart races trying to compensate. Your breathing becomes shallow and rapid. You get disoriented, confused. He's seen experienced climbers, men and women who've summited Everest, reduced to crawling on their hands and knees at this altitude. Many climbers report feeling an overwhelming urge to sleep. Your body wants to shut down, conserve energy. And if you give in to that urge, if you sit down and close your eyes, you don't wake up. The children aren't the only bodies pulled from high-altitude peaks in peaceful, sleeping positions. In 2019, the body of a climber was found on Aconcagua, seated against a rock, looking like he'd just dozed off. In 2015, 3 climbers died on Huascarán, all found lying down as if taking a nap. There's something about extreme altitude that makes death gentle, peaceful. You don't thrash around, you don't fight it. You just drift away. So what is it about that environment that makes a person curl up, go to sleep, and die? If you've been at that altitude, even for a few hours, you feel awful. The headaches are intense, splitting. The nausea is constant. Every movement takes enormous effort. Pale. He pulls up photos from a medical study he conducted on Ojos del Salado, another high peak. Climbers with oxygen saturation levels in their blood at 45%. Normal is 95 to 100%. At 45% saturation, you're one step away from losing consciousness. Your judgment is impaired. Your decision-making is shot. Some climbers start hallucinating. They see things that aren't there, hear voices. Have you ever been somewhere so cold, so exhausting, that you just wanted to give up? Maybe you were hiking in winter and your fingers went numb. Maybe you were caught in a rainstorm without proper gear, shivering uncontrollably. That feeling of wanting to just stop, to just sit down and rest, even though you know you shouldn't. That's a tiny fraction of what these children would have experienced. Even with the best modern equipment, Gore-Tex, down jackets, insulated boots, supplemental oxygen, climbing at this altitude is brutal. It's dangerous. People die doing it every year. Buh. Now imagine children, a 6-year-old, a 7-year-old, a 13-year-old. It's almost incomprehensible. A 6-year-old at 22,000 feet. I can't think of a modern equivalent. There are no 6-year-olds on Everest. They're dark. There are no children on K2. It doesn't happen. But Dr. Privigiano doesn't believe that children died from altitude sickness alone. He studied the conditions on Lelealaco, the temperature records, the wind patterns, and he believes they may have fallen victim to another killer on the mountain. At that elevation, temperatures regularly drop to minus 30 degrees Celsius. That's minus 22 Fahrenheit. And it's windy. Constantly windy. The wind chill can make it feel like minus 50. Hypothermia. Bah. Also known in medical literature as the sweet death, because of the expression it leaves on many of its victims' frozen faces. Hypothermia makes you drowsy, confused. You stop shivering at a certain point, which is actually a bad sign.
It means your body is giving up, and then you just go to sleep
peacefully. Some people in the late stages of hypothermia even start undressing. It's called paradoxical undressing. Your brain gets so confused by the cold that it thinks you're overheating, so you start taking your clothes off. We find bodies in the mountains sometimes, naked, surrounded by their discarded clothing. Prevignano has seen it firsthand. Bodies that look peaceful, no signs of struggle, just sleep. It makes you look calm when you die, because you're not fighting anymore. Your brain has shut down. You're unconscious. It's like someone turning off the lights slowly, one by one. Peaceful, sleeping, frozen, just like the 3 children. Bah! It seems like hypothermia could have been the killer. Dr. Wirch Wilson searches the CT scans for confirmation.
Hypothermia affects the entire body.
But the most obvious signs appear in the extremities. Fingers and toes. And in the stomach. He zooms in on the scans of their hands and feet. We look for frostbite. When tissue freezes, the cellular structure breaks down. Crystals form. You get tissue death. And we can see that in scans, even 500 years later. Pig. He examines each child carefully. El Niño's feet. La Niña del Rayo's hands. La Doncella's toes. I can see all the bones in their feet. The metatarsals, phalanges, all perfectly intact. The tissue around them shows no signs of ice crystal formation. No evidence of frostbite, past or present. He moves to the stomach scans. Hypothermia also causes very specific changes in the stomach lining. The body shunts blood away from the digestive system to protect vital organs. This causes superficial ulcers, little erosions in the stomach lining. He scrolls through the images, looking for the telltale signs. Man looking at all 3 children's stomach scans, and I don't see the characteristic ulceration pattern. The stomach linings look normal. No frostbite, no stomach lesions. Based on this evidence, I have nothing to suggest these children died from hypothermia. So, if not hypothermia, what? But then, something else in the scans catches Wilson's attention. Something unexpected. Wait! I'm looking at La Doncella's stomach, and this is interesting. There's actually food in there. partially digested food.
He calls over Dr. Corthels to look.
You can see it clearly. Food matter in the stomach. And yes, fecal material in the intestines. Which means her digestive system was functioning normally right up until death. Dr. Corthels leans in close to the monitor. So she was eating. Recently, very recently. Dr. Wilson nods. Based on the state of digestion, I'd say she ate within 2 hours of death. Maybe less. The same is true for the other 2 children. All 3 have food in their stomachs. This is significant. This really changes things because it points toward a pretty sudden, unnatural death, not a prolonged process. Think about it. If you were dying slowly from altitude sickness, you wouldn't be eating. You'd be too nauseous, too weak. Your body would be shutting down. People dying from altitude sickness or hypothermia, they don't sit down for a meal. They can barely function. The last thing on their mind is food. So why would 3 children eat on a freezing mountaintop and then mysteriously die just hours later? What could kill them so suddenly, so completely, that they never even had time to digest their last meal, with investigators baffled? And the cause of death still a mystery. A new expert is called in, someone with an unusual, almost detective-like way of extracting information from mummies. Someone who can read the chemical story written in their hair. If you have good preservation of hair, you have information that's been frozen in time. Chemical timeline. Bioarchaeologist Dr. Timothy Taylor specializes in analyzing hair from ancient remains. He's worked on Egyptian mummies, Viking burials, Bronze Age bodies from peat bogs. But nothing, he says, compares to the Inca children. The preservation is so good that we can extract information we normally can't get. Most mummies, the hair is brittle, damaged, contaminated. But these children, their hair is like it was just washed. Hair is remarkable. It grows about ½ an inch per month. And as it grows, it incorporates chemicals from your bloodstream. Everything you eat, everything you drink, even the air you breathe, leaves traces in your hair. We can use those chemicals to establish essentially a timeline. A month-by-month record taking us back through the final months, even years, of their existence. He carefully cuts samples from each child's head, small sections, just a few strands. We take samples from different locations. The roots, the middle section, the tips, because each pot represents a different time period. The samples are sent to a specialized laboratory. There, they're dissolved in acid, broken down to their molecular components. And analyzed using mass spectrometry. What we're looking for
are isotope ratios. Stable isotopes of carbon, nitrogen, oxygen. These ratios tell us what they were eating, where they were living, how their bodies were functioning. The results, when they come back, are stunning. Taylor identifies a significant shift in all three children's diets, beginning about 12 months before they died. Looking at La Doncella's hair, we can see a clear change. About 1 year before death, her diet becomes much richer. More protein, more maize, higher quality foods. It shows the graph, a clear spike in certain isotopes. This isn't the diet of a normal child. Normal Inca children ate mostly potatoes, quinoa, some llama meat, but La Doncella, in her final year, she's consuming maize regularly. Dried meat, high-status foods. The same pattern appears in the other two children. El Niño shows increased protein intake. La Niña del Rayo the same. This tells us something changed in their lives about a year before they died. They went from eating like common children to eating like nobility. But there's something else in the isotope analysis. Something that points to movement, travel. When you drink water in different regions, towards page, the oxygen isotopes in that water vary. Mountain water has a different signature than valley water. Desert water is different from coastal water. And these signatures get locked into your hair. He traces the oxygen isotope graph with his finger. You can see it here. Fluctuations, changes. This doesn't happen if you stay in one place. This is the signature of travel. Movement across different environments. The chemical signatures suggest a journey, a long journey. Based on the isotope shifts, I'd estimate they were traveling for at least 3 months, possibly longer, moving from lower elevations to higher elevations, through different climate zones. If Dr. Taylor is right, 3 children, the youngest, just 6 years old, made a mysteriously long journey before they died. But why? Why would children travel for months to reach a remote volcanic peak? For anthropologist Dr. Ben Johann Reinhard, the answer lies in understanding something fundamental about Andean culture, something that hasn't changed in thousands of years. Mountains. Mountains are considered sacred throughout the Andes, not just by the Inca. This goes back 3,000 years, maybe longer. The earliest civilizations in South America, they all worship. He's standing on a hillside overlooking Cusco. Behind him, snow-capped peaks rise against the sky. You can see why. Mountains dominate the landscape here. They control everything. The rain comes from clouds that gather around the peaks. The rivers flow down from mountain glaciers. Your crops, your animals, your survival, it all depends on the mountains. In Andean cosmology, mountains are alive.
alive. Their gods, called Apus, they watch over the valleys below. They provide water, weather, fertility, and they demand respect. For the Inca, mountains weren't just sacred, they were necessary. You couldn't survive without pleasing them, so you made offerings. You performed ceremonies. You sent gifts to the peaks. Mountain worship is still practiced today in traditional communities throughout the Andes. Claudio Momini is a modern-day Andean spiritual leader. He's been making offerings to mountain gods since he was 6 years old, taught by his grandfather, who was taught by his grandfather. Unbroken chain going back centuries. Every August, we climb the mountains to make offerings. We bring coca leaves, llama fat, colored wool, seashells. We build a small altar. We burn the offerings, and we ask the Apus for protection. He's climbed dozens of peaks in his lifetime, some over 18,000 feet. For us, the mountains are our fathers. They are powerful, sometimes angry, sometimes generous, but always watching. You cannot ignore them. Have you ever stood at the base of a mountain, looking up at the peak, and felt small? That sense of awe, of insignificance, that feeling that something much larger than you is looming overhead. That's what the Inca felt every day, braving in the shadow of the Andes. For thousands of years, our people have given offerings, seeds, food, clothes, animals, whatever we could afford, because the mountains give us life. So we give back. For the Inca, mountains were religious sites, places where humans could communicate with the divine, where the physical world met the spiritual world. Reinhard, Mount Lulelec, was especially significant. Lulelec is one of the highest peaks in this region. It's 22,100 feet. It rises above almost everything else. From the valley, it looks like it touches the sky. He's climbed it himself multiple times. Standing on the summit, you're above the clouds. The sun feels closer. The air is so thin and clear that you can see for hundreds of miles, it feels like. The edge of the world. For sun-worshipping Inca, this would have been the ultimate sacred site. The Inca believed the sun god, Inti, lived in the sky, and mountains were the pillars that held up the sky. So climbing the highest peaks, you were literally getting closer to God. Luleyako would have been seen as a controller of fertility, of crops, dog of livestock, of rain. The Inca wanted to get into the realm of the gods, to be as close as physically possible. So they did this incredible pilgrimage. They climbed Luleyako to make offerings, to show devotion, to ensure the Empire's survival. It looks like the 3 children were brought here for religious reasons, as part of a sacred... In our cosmology, volcanoes are especially important. They represent the womb of Mother Earth. The Pachamama, there where life begins, where fertility comes from. Claudio gestures to a distant volcanic peak. The girls, especially young girls entering womanhood, they represent that feminine essence, that creative power. So it makes sense in our tradition that girls would be taken to volcanoes for ceremonies. But if these children were part of a sacred pilgrimage, part of an important religious ceremony, why didn't they come back down? Why did they die on the summit? With no signs of trauma, no evidence of hypothermia or altitude sickness, investigators take yet another look at the bodies, searching for clues they might have missed, and they find something, but potentially significant. Dr. Wilson is reviewing the CT scans when he notices it. I'm looking at La Doncella's mouth region, and wait, there's something unusual. A bulge on the inside of her cheek. B. He zooms in, adjusts the contrast. Yes, there's definitely something there. Between her teeth and the inside of her left cheek, when they examine the internal scans more closely, rotating the 3D image, the object becomes clearer. It's organic material, plant matter. We can see it's tucked into the left side of her mouth, held between her molars and her cheek, like she was chewing something when she died, or like someone placed it there. The question becomes, what is it, and why is it there? Could this be something that was forced into her mouth? Could it have caused her death? Could it be evidence of how she died? Looking at the density, the shape, my best guess is it's a quid of leaves. Chewed leaves. But what kind of leaves? That's the question. The same examination is done on the other 2 children. El Niño, nothing unusual in his mouth. But La Niña del Rayo, the 7-year-old with the open mouth, she also has something.
The Inca used these intricate patterns as
Her mouth is open, which makes it easier to see. There's plant material visible, caught between her teeth.
these exquisite
All of these findings raise new suspicions, new questions about what happened 500 years ago on that mountain. 3 children made a long pilgrimage to a sacred volcano. Their hair chemistry proves it. Despite their young ages, they walked hundreds, possibly thousands of miles. They climbed to a colossal height, but upon reaching the summit, they appear to have simply curled up and died within hours of eating their last meal, with plant matter in their mouths. At this point, the deaths remain a mystery. I have no evidence of disease, no evidence of trauma, no evidence of environmental causes. So what killed them? Dr. Wilson, at a loss to explain their deaths, does what he would do with any modern suspicious death. He looks beyond the physical examination. With teenagers in modern cases, if there's no natural cause and no trauma, the next thing I consider is toxicology. Drugs, poison, substances. It may seem strange to search for drugs in the bodies of ancient children, but Dr. Taylor, the hair analysis expert, is doing exactly that. Testing for compounds that shouldn't be there. Chemicals that might explain the sudden, mysterious deaths. And when the toxicology results come back, they're remarkable, more than remarkable. They're stunning. We found significant levels of cocoa alkaloids in their hair.
High levels. In modern terms, we're talking about cocaine metabolites.
Cocaine in the bodies of 3 ancient children. But not just traces. High concentrations. Dangerous concentrations. For La Doncella, the 13-year-old, the levels are extraordinary high. Based on her body mass, her age, her physiology, these are doses that would be considered toxic, potentially lethal. And there's more. We can track the increase over time. Looking at her hair from root to tip, we can see her cocaine levels rising steadily over her final 12 months, starting low, then gradually increasing, until in her final weeks the levels spike dramatically. On the surface, it's a shocking discovery. Ancient children drugged with cocaine. But, according to Dr. Precisa Taylor, this isn't what it seems. This isn't about ancient narcotics or abuse. This isn't cocaine as we know it today, with all the negative connotations. The white powder, the drug cartels, the addiction. This is simply the natural chemical compounds derived from coca leaves. Wow! The drug we call cocaine wasn't synthesized until the 1850s. A German chemist named Albert Niemann isolated it from coca leaves, created the purified, concentrated, addictive substance. But for thousands of years before that, coca leaves were used throughout the Andes, not as a drug, as a sacred plant. Coca is native to the Andes. It's been cultivated here for at least 4,000 years. The Inca used it. The cultures before the Inca used it. It's part of our heritage. Claudio pulls out a small cloth pouch. Inside, dried green leaves. Coca. This is sacred to us. More sacred than gold. More sacred than silver. Coca connects us to the earth, to our ancestors, to the gods. He places a few leaves in his mouth, tucks them into his cheek, begins to chew slowly. We use it for ceremonies, for medicine, for energy when we work in the fields or climb mountains. It helps with altitude sickness, suppresses hunger and thirst. Sharpens the mind. The telltale sign of someone chewing coca is a bulge in their cheek. The leaves form a quid, a ball of chewed plant matter held between the molars and the inside of the cheek, just like La Doncella, just like La Nina del Rio. Looking at the scans, this appears to be exactly what we're seeing, a quid of coca leaves.
Still in their mouths after 500 years. And according to Claudio, this reveals something important.
Something about who these children were, about their status. In Inca times, not everyone was allowed to use coca. It was controlled, restricted. Only royalty could use it freely. Priests, high-status individuals, and those chosen for special religious purposes. Coca was too valuable, too sacred to be wasted on common people. If these children were given coca, and lots of it, based on the chemical analysis, they were important. They were selected for something significant. The children were no ordinary peasants. They weren't random victims. They were chosen, selected, prepared, and a closer look at the artifacts buried with them confirms it, breathes it beyond doubt. Expansion section. Insert after batch. 3, but La Doncella and her companions weren't the only Capococha victims ever discovered. Over the last 100 years, archaeologists have found more than 40 sacrificed children on mountain peaks throughout the Andes. Each one tells a different story. Each one reveals new details about this brutal but sacred practice. Reinhardt himself has discovered 18 of them. And each discovery, he says, never gets easier. The first one I found was in 1995. A young boy on Mount Ampato in Peru. When I uncovered his face, I had to step away, take a moment. Even though I knew it was coming, even though I'd been searching for exactly this, seeing a dead child never stops being difficult. Boo. The boy from Ampato, later called Juanita or the Ice Maiden, was about 12 years old. She'd been struck on the head. A single blow to the right temple. You could see the fracture clearly. A depressed skull fracture. Whatever they hit her with, a club, a stone hammer, it was enough to kill her instantly. Unlike La Doncella, Juanita showed signs of a violent death. Her mouth was slightly open. Her expression, not peaceful. Some people think she looks surprised, like she didn't expect it. Or maybe she did, and the surprise is something else. We'll never know. Wow. But what struck Dr. Reinhardt most was her clothing. She was dressed beautifully. Layers of textiles. Mating. Fine alpaca wool. A pin made of silver holding her shawl. She looked regal, important,
The same pattern appears in other Capacacha burials. In 1954,
a young boy was found on El Plomo Mountain in Chile, about 8 or 9 years old, frozen in a sitting position, his face painted with yellow pigment.
the El Plomo boy, he had coca quids in his mouth, just like La Doncella,
and chemical analysis showed high levels of alcohol in his system. He was heavily drugged when he died. He too showed signs of head trauma, a blow to the skull. It seems like there were different methods used. Sometimes the children were drugged and suffocated. Sometimes they were struck on the head. Sometimes we don't know. The bodies are too degraded. But there's a pattern in who was chosen. Every single Capacocha victim we found, every single one shows signs of high status. Fine clothing, elaborate headdresses, silver pins, gold ornaments. These weren't peasant children. They were selected, groomed, prepared. Have you ever been chosen for something important? A special award? A unique opportunity? A role that set you apart from everyone else? That mixture of pride and pressure, of honor and fear, that's what these children must have felt, multiplied by 1,000.
In the year before their deaths, many of these children showed dramatic changes in their diet.
We can see it in their hair. Bone chemistry. They go from eating potatoes and quinoa to eating maize and meat. Elite foods. Blend. They were being fattened up, prepared physically for their role. It's similar to what we see in other sacrificial practices around the world. The Aztec did it. The Maya. Many cultures that practiced human sacrifice. They treated the victims well beforehand. Make them beautiful. Feed them the best food. Give them drugs to ease the transition.
And then?
It's a kind of psychological mechanism, I think. For the people performing the sacrifice, it's easier to kill someone if you've convinced yourself you're doing them a favor, honoring them, elevating them to godhood. In 1990, the same year La Doncella was discovered, another Capachocha victim was found on Mount Sarasara in Peru. A girl about 15 years old, still wearing her feathered headdress, sitting with her knees drawn up, looking like she'd just fallen asleep. When I saw the photos, I thought of La Doncella immediately.
The similarity was striking. The position.
The clothing. The peaceful expression.
Baya Sarah girl, as she became known,
had suffered differently. Her lungs showed signs of pulmonary edema. Fluid buildup. This is what happens in severe altitude sickness. Your lungs fill with fluid. You drown, cigar. Essentially, in your own bodily fluids. It's a horrible way to die. But the drugs in her system suggest she may not have been fully aware. Her coca levels were extremely high. Combined with chicha, she was probably unconscious when the pulmonary edema set in. Small mercy. Each discovery adds pieces to the puzzle. Each child tells us something new about the Capacocha ceremony. Some were killed violently. Some died from altitude sickness or hypothermia. Some, like La Doncella, were gently suffocated. There was no single method, no standardized ritual. Each ceremony seems to have been unique, adapted to the circumstances, the location, the specific priests involved.
But they all share certain features.
All were children. All were high status. All were drugged. And all were left on mountaintops in positions that suggest they were carefully arranged after death. The arrangement matters. The positioning. These weren't just burials. They were installations, displays. The children were meant to be seen by the gods, looking their best, peaceful, beautiful. Dr. Cerruti has studied dozens of these burials. And she's noticed something else, a pattern in the gender ratio. Most of the Capacocha victims we found are girls, about 70%, which is interesting, because in many sacrificial traditions, males are preferred. But for the Inca, girls were more valuable for this specific purpose. Why girls? The answer lies in Inca cosmology. The earth, Pachamama, is female. The mountains, while often male, have wounds to life. So offering girls to the mountains, especially girls on the verge of womanhood, makes sense in their symbolic framework. La Doncella was 13, just entering puberty. That transitional age between childhood and adulthood would have made her especially powerful as an offering. She represented potential, fertility, the future. And she wasn't alone on the mountain. The two younger children, El Niño and La Niña del Rayo, were also part of the ceremony. We think they were attendants, or perhaps companions, to keep La Doncella from being lonely in the afterlife. Multiple burials like this aren't uncommon. On Mount Corupuna in Peru, archaeologists found 3 children buried together. On Cerro El Toro in Chile, 2. The Inca believed that death wasn't the end. It was a transition. And in that transition, you might need help. They sent children together. It's a heartbreaking thought. These children, knowing they were going to die, at least had each other. Looking at how they're positioned in the Yulaleaco burial.
La Doncella is slightly elevated.
The other 2 are below her, like they're attending to her, serving her even in death. El Niño and La Niña del Rayo were sacrifices too, but secondary sacrifices. Their role was to accompany La Doncella, to help her transition to godhood. It's possible they weren't even from important families. They might have been selected specifically because La Doncella needed companions. Servants for the afterlife. The younger girl, La Niña del Rayo, has a different expression than the others. Her mouth is open, frozen mid-cry or mid-scream. People ask me, was she screaming when she died? Was she calling for help? We can't know for certain, but her facial muscles were positioned that way when rigor mortis set in. Blue. So yes, her mouth was open. She may have been crying out. It's the most disturbing aspect of the burial. While La Doncella looks peaceful, serene, La Niña del Rayo looks distressed. Maybe the drugs affected her differently. Maybe she was more aware of what was happening. Maybe she was too young to understand, and that made her more frightened. She was only 7 years old. 7. Think about a 7-year-old you know, a niece, a nephew, a neighbor's child. Imagine them on a freezing mountaintop, drugged, surrounded by strangers, knowing on some level that they're about to die. This is the part of Capacocha that's hardest to accept. Even understanding the cultural context, even knowing they believed they were honoring these children, it's still the death of innocence. Dr. Furious Reethy. Corthell struggles with this daily. B. I care for them. I study them. And every day I'm confronted with the reality of what happened to them. It's not easy. It never gets easy. But she believes the work is important. We can't change what happened. We can't bring them back. But we can honor them by telling their truth. All of it. The beauty of their culture. And the brutality of their deaths. The Capacha ceremony was many things. Religious devotion, political manipulation, cultural practice, and child sacrifice. All of those truths can exist simultaneously. The Inca weren't evil. They were people. People with different beliefs, different values, different understandings of life and death. But that doesn't make what happened okay. It's a delicate balance, respecting the culture while acknowledging the horror. I think we can do both. We can appreciate the Inca civilization, their achievements, their art, their engineering, big. And we can also say, this part, the Capacocha, this was wrong. Big Sioux, even by their own standards. Some Inca questioned the practice. Spanish chroniclers record that when the empire fell, when everything collapsed, some people said it was punishment, divine retribution for the Capachocha sacrifices. Whether that's true or propaganda from Catholic priests, we'll never know. But it suggests that even then, even in their own time, not everyone agreed with the practice. Perhaps that's why La Doncella's teeth were ground down from stress. Perhaps she was caught between two worlds, believing in her duty, but also being afraid, being human. Buried with La Doncella, carefully placed around her body, was an extraordinary collection of artifacts, objects that tell a story of power, status, and religious significance. The first object that catches archaeologists' attention is a textile, a male tunic. This tunic is remarkable. The weaving is exceptional. Hundreds of threads per inch. The kind of craftsmanship that takes months to produce. Dr. Maria Constanza Cerruti, an archaeologist who specializes in Inca textiles, examines it closely. The tunic is woven with geometric patterns, squares within squares, colors that alternate, red, black, yellow, a design language that the Inca used to convey information. These patterns aren't random. They're symbolic. They're a kind of code. Disintro, disintro, disin, disin. Each design element means something. She traces the pattern with her finger. These little squares, this specific configuration, it's called Tokapu. It's a symbol of unity between different regions of the empire. It represents political alliances. The tunic's quality suggests it belonged to someone of very high status. A governor, possibly even someone connected to the royal family. But here's what's interesting. This is a man's garment, very clearly masculine. So why is it buried with a 13-year-old girl? The most likely explanation, it belonged to her father. In Inca burial practices, family members often contributed items to the tomb, precious things, personal things, as offerings to accompany the deceased. Perhaps her father placed it with her. Perhaps he was there, on the mountain, when she was buried, standing in the freezing wind, watching. The pattern suggests he was a Caraca, a local governor or chief, which means La Doncella, this girl, she came from a powerful family. Breathing. It's a tantalizing clue, connecting the children to Inca nobility, possibly even to the emperor himself. More artifacts point to where the children came from. A ceramic vessel, beautifully painted, found near La Doncella's feet. This ceramic is very special. Look at the decoration. These geometric patterns, this style, it's distinctly from Cusco. Cusco, the heart of the Inca Empire. The capital. Today, Cusco is a bustling city of 400,000 people. Tourists flock there. It's the gateway to Machu Picchu. But 500 years ago, it was the center of the known world for the Inca, home to the emperor. The seat of all political and religious power. This vessel didn't just happen to be here. It was carried here, over 1,000 miles, from Cusco to Mount Luleyalaco. Someone brought it specifically for this burial. Dr. Reinhard is in Cusco now, walking through the Plaza de Armas, the main square. We can picture the Inca Empire as a wheel, roads radiating out in all directions like spokes. The center, the axle, is Cusco. Everything led back here. At its height, Cusco was as large as any city in Europe. Larger than London. Larger than Paris. A metropolis of stone buildings, paved streets, running water.
The Spanish, when they first saw Cusco in 1533,
They couldn't believe it. They'd expected to find primitive villages. Instead, they found a city that rivaled anything in Europe. Beneath a Spanish colonial church in the center of Cusco lie the ruins of the most sacred Inca temple, the Coricancha, the Temple of the Sun. The Spanish built their church right on top of it, trying to erase it, but the foundations remain. You can still see the precision of the stonework. The Coricancha, in its original form, was covered in sheets of gold, pure gold. When the Spanish chronicles described it, they said, the walls blazed with light. The sun would hit the gold plating, and it was so bright, so dazzling, that it could blind you if you looked directly at it. Gold, the color of the sun. The Inca worshipped Inti, the sun god, the source of all life, all warmth, all growth. And their religion wasn't confined to temples. They believed the best way to reach the sun, to get as close as physically possible, was to climb, to ascend the highest peaks they could find, to literally rise toward the sky. Mountains were seen as ladders or bridges connecting the earth to the heavens. The higher you climbed, the closer you got to Inti. Mount Luleyalaco, where the 3 children were found, would have been seen as one of these sacred bridges, a direct path to the divine. This may be the route the children would have taken when they left Cusco. Dr. Dama Reinhard is standing on an ancient Inca road paved with stones, still visible after 500 years. From here, it's over 1,000 miles to Mount Luleyalaco. Boo! Through Peru, through Bolivia, into Argentina, and then up to the peak. The Inca had no horses. The horse didn't exist in South America until the Spanish brought them. No wheeled carts. The wheel, though known, was never used for transportation in the Inca Empire. Everything moved on foot, or on the backs of llamas. So these children, they walked every step of the way, through some of the most extreme terrain on Earth. The route would have taken them through the Atacama Desert, one of the driest places on the planet. There are parts of the Atacama that have never received rain. Not in recorded history, not in geological history. Some areas went 400 years between rainfall. It's so barren so lifeless that NASA tests Mars rovers there. The Spanish called it the land that God forgot. They said only outlaws and madmen would cross it. Yet the children crossed it. A 6-year-old, a 7-year-old, a 13-year-old, walking day after day through landscapes that looked like the surface of another planet. After the desert, they would have faced the mountain itself, the climb to an altitude that wasn't reached by Europeans for another 400 years. Doctor. Reinhardt has climbed Llullaillaco multiple times. He knows what it takes. Even with modern equipment, this is a multi-day climb. You need acclimatization. Big. You need proper gear. You need support. And even then, it's dangerous. In 1952, a team of Chilean mountaineers became the first modern climbers to summit Llullaillaco. They used oxygen. They used ropes. They used modern boots and clothing. And they described it as one of the most difficult climbs they'd ever attempted. Now imagine children doing it in 1500, wearing wool, leather sandals, no oxygen, no ropes, no technical gear whatsoever. It's almost incomprehensible. It's a phenomenal thing. Truly phenomenal. And now it's a place of phenomenal. For a 6-year-old to climb to 22,100 feet, I don't know of any modern equivalent. A clearer picture of these 3 children is emerging. Not random victims, not peasants, but children with ties to Cusco, possibly ties to the emperor himself. Children who were given coca, a privilege reserved for the elite. Children who walked an immense distance, brutal landscapes, to reach the summit of a sacred mountain. But this journey ended in their deaths. So investigators search for more clues, more evidence, anything that might explain what happened in those final hours. And they find disturbing signs of stress, of fear. Studies of the children's teeth show unusual wear patterns, grinding, erosion. The molars especially show evidence of bruxism. That's the medical term for teeth grinding. It's usually associated with stress, anxiety, tension. Dr. Wilson has seen it in modern cases. Children who grind their teeth at night. Adults under extreme pressure. It leaves distinctive marks. The enamel gets worn down. The surfaces become flat instead of having normal cusps. All 3 children show this pattern, but it's most pronounced in La Doncella. Her teeth are significantly worn for someone her age. This suggests she was under prolonged stress, possibly for months. Was she afraid during the journey? Did she know what was coming? Did she understand, on some level, that she wasn't coming home? And there's another disturbing detail. Found on La Niña del Rayo,
the 7-year-old vomit. Dried, crusted, on her lips. We can see it clearly in the photographs from the excavation. Residue around her mouth. Chemical analysis confirms it's vomit. Dr. Carthos struggles with this finding. We know she vomited shortly before she died. Maybe minutes, maybe seconds. The question is, why? Some theories suggest vomit indicates extreme stress, fear, terror. When you're terrified, your body goes into fight or flight mode. Your sympathetic nervous system activates. And sometimes your stomach just empties. You vomit involuntarily. Have you ever been so scared that you felt sick to your stomach? That nauseating feeling in the pit of your gut?
That urge to throw up? That's what this 7-year-old girl may have experienced.
In her final moments, on a freezing mountaintop, 22,100 feet above sea level, surrounded by strangers, knowing something terrible was about to happen, or maybe already happening. It's one of the hardest parts of this research, thinking about what these children went through, what they felt, what they knew.
Dr. Corthal's voice breaks slightly.
They were just children. That's what people forget sometimes. They were real children, with fears and hopes and feelings. The question remains, what were they afraid of? Or, more accurately, Bo, who were they afraid of?
Investigators are piecing together the final months of these 500-year-old Inca children.
Pottery links them to Cusco, the empire's capital. A high-status tunic suggests noble lineage. Coca leaves in amounts that would be toxic place them in an important spiritual role. Their hair chemistry shows a dramatic change in diet, beginning 1 year before death. Common food becoming elite food. And there's one more artifact, one object that stands out above all the rest. Found on La Doncella's head, still in place after 500 years.
A headdress. A feathered headdress of extraordinary beauty.
This headdress, it's unlike anything we've ever found. The craftsmanship is remarkable. The preservation is miraculous. Dr. Cerruti handles it with reverence, with gloved hands. In a climate-controlled room, the headdress is made from feathers. Red feathers, yellow feathers, white feathers from tropical birds found hundreds of miles away. These feathers came from the Amazon basin, macaws, parrots, birds that lived in the jungle, not in the mountains, which means the feathers themselves were trade goods, precious trade goods. The feathers are arranged in intricate patterns, stitched to a cloth base with threads so fine they're almost invisible. The stitching is perfect. Pity of feather placed precisely. This would have taken months to create. And the feathers, even after 500 years,
still have color, still have their original vibrancy. In most archaeological contexts, feathers disintegrate.
They're organic. They break down.
But here, because of the extreme cold and dryness, they're almost perfect for Dr. Saruti. This headdress is the final piece of the puzzle, the key to understanding who La Doncella really was. This type of headdress, this specific design, was only worn during the most sacred ceremonies, and primarily, almost exclusively, by virgins of the sun. Beautiful red darkness. Virgins of the sun. Aklakuna in Quechua. They were famous throughout the Inca Empire. Legendary. Spanish chroniclers, priests who arrived after the conquest, wrote extensively about them, described them in detail. They were a select group of girls and women, chosen for their beauty, their purity, taken from their families to serve the sun god. The selection process began when girls were very young. Some could be chosen as young as 6 or 7 years old, 11, 12. Officials would travel throughout the empire looking for suitable candidates. Beauty was one criterion. The chroniclers mention physical appearance repeatedly. Unblemished skin, symmetrical features, the most beautiful girls they could find. But there were other requirements too. They needed to show devotion, obedience, a certain spiritual quality. They couldn't be fearful or defiant, and in some cases, families volunteered their daughters. It was considered an honor, a great honor. To have your daughter chosen meant your family was blessed by the gods. It elevated your status.
Have you ever had to give up something precious? Something you loved?
Because you believed it was for a greater purpose? That feeling of sacrifice mixed with pride, of loss mixed with honor. That's what these families must have felt, watching their daughters walk away, never to return. As a virgin of the sun, La Doncella would have been separated from her family forever, taken from her home. This, from her mother, her father, her siblings. She would never see them again. That was part of the commitment. Total separation. Complete devotion to religious service. She would have been brought to Cusco, to the Aclawasi, the house of the chosen women. Dr. Reinhardt is standing at the ruins of one such building. Stone walls, no windows. These buildings were designed for complete seclusion. No windows meant no view of the outside world. No contact with men except high priests and the emperor himself. The walls are thick, cold. They were kept here, behind these walls, in isolation, to keep them pure, untouched, sacred. Inside, the virgins of the sun lived a cloistered existence, part nun, part priestess, part prisoner. They spent their days weaving textiles for religious ceremonies, preparing food offerings for the gods, learning sacred songs and prayers. They were taught by older women who had been chosen in previous generations. It was a lifetime commitment. Most of them would never leave. They'd grow old here, die here, buried within the walls. Rarely were they allowed outside. A few times a year, for major festivals, they might participate in public ceremonies, walking in processions, performing rituals, but always under strict supervision. La Doncella would have lived this life for months, maybe a year, waking before dawn, weaving, praying, preparing offerings, going to sleep in a dark room, alone. So why does she leave? Why does she walk 1,000 miles to a distant mountain with 2 younger children? The answer, according to the Spanish chronicles, is chilling. At a certain point, these virgins of the sun were given their assignments, their fates, what the empire needed from them. Some would be selected to become concubines, married off to Inca noblemen, governors of distant provinces, military leaders. This was considered an honor. To receive a virgin of the sun as a wife was a reward for loyal service to the emperor. Some would remain in the temple, serving for life, growing old in the Aklawasi. But a very select few, were chosen for the highest honor of all, the ultimate service to the empire, human sacrifice. La Doncella didn't go to Mount Lulualico to make an offering. She was the offering, singled out by her own people for human sacrifice. The word the Inca used was Capacocha, Capac, meaning royal or sacred, Hucha, meaning sin or obligation. Together, a sacred obligation, an offering of the most precious thing imaginable. A child. The Capacocha ceremony was the highest form of religious ritual in the Inca Empire. It wasn't done lightly, it wasn't done often. It was reserved for critical moments. Dr. Reinhardt has studied every Spanish chronicle that mentions it, every archaeological find, every piece of evidence. The emperor would order a capacocha during times of crisis, when the empire was threatened, when natural disasters struck, when a new emperor took the throne, or when they needed to consecrate important sites. Boo! Like the summit of the empire's most sacred mountains, the ceremony required children. Different qualities were taken into consideration when selecting which children to use. They had to be physically perfect. No scars, no deformities, no blemishes. They had to come from good families, noble lineages. Sometimes children of provincial governors were chosen. It was a way of binding the provinces to the empire. If your child was sacrificed for the good of the realm, you were tied to that decision. Loyal. They had to have the right temperament. They couldn't be fearful children,
22,000 feet.
couldn't be defiant or difficult.
As a living god.
They needed to have what the chronicles call a certain charisma, a presence. They had to seem special, and they had to be able to make the journey. Because the Capacocha wasn't just about the death, it was about the pilgrimage, the journey to the mountain, the public spectacle of it. For the Inca, being chosen for Capacocha was presented as the ultimate privilege, the greatest honor a child could receive. In Cusco, the selected children would be treated as royalty,
Incredibly fine
as
tools,
gods,
visible even today, utilized
for months before the ceremony. These children were pampered, given the finest clothes, the best food, coca to chew, chicha to drink. They were celebrated. La Doncella would have gone through this, dressed in beautiful textiles, fed maize and meat instead of potatoes and quinoa, given coca leaves to chew. She would have participated in ceremonies in the presence of the Inca emperor himself. She would have been paraded through the streets of Cusco. People would have bowed to her, honored her. The feathered headdress she wore, the one found on her head, was part of this ceremony. Crown, a mark of her sacred status. We believe she wore this headdress when she walked to her final destination, when she left Cusco and began the long journey south. Imagine it, a 13-year-old girl wearing a crown of tropical feathers, walking through the streets of the capital. Thousands of people watching, some crying, some celebrating, all believing she was becoming something more than human. The Inca believed, truly believed, that these children wouldn't really die. They would be transformed. They would become intermediaries between humans and gods. But they would live forever, protecting the empire, ensuring good harvests, bringing rain. She left Cusco in a blaze of glory, and the fame followed her all the way to the volcano. As she walked through villages, W3 towns, people would have known. They would have seen the headdress, the fine clothes, the procession. They would have known she was a Capacocha child. Dr. Cerruti tries to imagine what La Doncella was thinking, feeling. Was she proud? Was she terrified? Was she resigned to her fate? We can't know for certain. But under all the glory, beneath all the ceremony, there's a bitter truth, a heartbreaking truth that no amount of religious belief can erase. A 13-year-old girl walking 1,000 miles, knowing she was going to die at the end. It's very difficult for me to understand this. As someone who works with children, could she accept it? Dr. Corthels pauses, looks at La Doncella's preserved face. Maybe her faith was so strong, maybe the belief system was so complete that she truly thought she was becoming a goddess. Maybe that gave her strength, but the physical evidence tells a different story. The ground down teeth, the stress fractures in her bones, the vomit on La Niña del Rayo's lips.
I think it was traumatic. I think these children were afraid.
Bodies show signs of fear, of stress, of suffering. In the Quechua language, the word for sacrifice doesn't exist. The correct word, the word used even today by Andean people, is offering. Good, not sacrifice. Offering. Claudio explains the distinction. We don't say human sacrifice. We say human offering. Capacocha. The principle is simple. The gods, the earth, the mountains, they gave us everything. Life, water, food, shelter. What can we give back in return? He pauses. The most precious thing we have, our lives, Briar, or the lives of our children.
It's a worldview that's almost impossible for modern Westerners to understand.
In our culture, in Andean culture, the individual is less important than the community. One person's life, even a child's life, is worth sacrificing if it means the survival of the empire, of the people. But that doesn't mean it was easy. That doesn't mean it wasn't painful. I'm sure these ceremonies were traumatic for everyone. The children, the families, even the priests performing the rituals. But they believed it was necessary, essential. So how were these ceremonies carried out? How did the children actually die? Chronicles mention different methods. Some accounts describe children being strangled. Others mention having their throats cut. Some talk about being struck on the head with clubs, blood, death. But when Dr. Wilson examines the CT scans of the Luleyalico children, he finds no evidence of any of this.
Ball!
I'm looking very carefully at their skeletal structures. The skulls, the neck bones, the ribs, searching for any signs of violent death. He zooms in on La Doncella's skull, rotates the 3D image. No fractures, no cracks. No evidence of blunt force trauma. Her skull is completely intact. He examines the neck, the delicate bones of the throat, the hyoid bone, this small U-shaped bone in the throat. It's very fragile. If someone is strangled, it almost always breaks. But hers is perfect, undamaged. The same is true for the other two children. No broken bones, no cut marks, no signs of violence. They died somehow without leaving a mark. So Dr. Wilson turns to other Capacha burials. other children found on other mountains, looking for clues, looking for patterns, and he finds them. This young victim, just 7 years old, was found on a volcano south of Mount Lololayaco, Bull Plomo in Chile, discovered in 1954. This child's case is different. Very different. His skull shows clear evidence of trauma, fractures, displacement of bone fragments. He was struck on the head.
Hard enough to kill him instantly. Some people say his expression shows pain.
His mouth is open, like he's crying out, and on the right side of his skull, you can see the wound, the impact site. He died violently, brutally. But the Ulelaco children show no such injuries. Their faces are peaceful, serene, almost sleeping. So what happened to them on the mountain? If they weren't killed violently, how did they die? Using the evidence from the tomb, the artifacts, the chemical analysis, and the accounts written by Spanish chronicles after the fall of the empire,
Investigators pieced together their final hours. It's the evening of December 20th,
1499. The December solstice is approaching. The shortest day of the year, the day when the sun reaches its furthest point from Earth and then begins its journey back. For sun worshippers, the solstice is the most sacred day of the year. One strong possibility is that they timed the Capacocha to coincide with the December solstice, December 21st, with the sunrise, the moment the sun begins its return. The children have been on the mountain for days already, maybe a week, acclimatizing, being prepared. The priests themselves would have been there, high-ranking religious officials, performing rituals, burning incense, making offerings. They would have built structures, platforms, altars. The archaeological evidence shows extensive construction at the summit, burial chambers. The night before the ceremony, the children are given food. Their last meal, maize, dried llama meat. The food in their stomachs tells us they ate within hours of death. So this final meal was probably eaten the night before, or early in the morning.
they're also given coca, lots of it.
The chemical analysis shows extremely high levels of cocoa in their systems, far beyond what would be used for altitude sickness or normal ceremonial use, and chicha. Corn beer. A ceramic chicha cup was found in La Doncella's tomb. Still there after 500 years. The alcohol content in their tissues is significant. Combined with the coca, this would have created powerful psychoactive effects, sedation, confusion, possibly hallucinations. Claudio explains the spiritual purpose of this. In our tradition, before the soul leaves the body, It needs to be strengthened, prepared for the journey to the afterlife. So we use sacred plants, coca, chicha, ayahuasca. These substances help the soul transition. But there's another purpose, a more practical one. For sure, there's a sedating effect from the alcohol, combined with coca at high doses. It would make the children drowsy, compliant, unable to resist. The drugs were to control them, to make what was about to happen easier on everyone. The children might not have even fully understood what was happening. In their altered state, confused, dizzy, unable to think clearly, they might have felt like they were dreaming, like none of it was real. All over their bodies are clues to these final hours. On La Doncella's face, traces of red pigment, cinnabar, ritual face paint. Cinnabar was precious, rare, dull, used only for the most sacred ceremonies. They painted her face, her cheeks, preparing her for the gods. Her braids are extraordinarily tight, so tight they must have been woven just hours before she died. Someone spent time preparing her, making her beautiful, braiding her hair with precision and care. This wasn't rushed. This was deliberate. And on La Niña de Rayo's lips, vomit. We know she vomited maybe minutes before she died. The vomit is still there, dried on her mouth. It suggests her body was reacting to the drugs, to the fear, to what was happening. As the sun begins to rise on December 21st, their short lives are ending.
But how? If they weren't strangled?
Weren't struck, weren't stabbed, how did they die? The investigation focuses on one final possibility, one method that would leave no marks, no evidence, no trace. Pathologist Dr. Wilson has examined hundreds of suspicious deaths in his career. And when all obvious causes are eliminated, when there's no trauma, no disease, no clear explanation, and he considers the subtle methods, the ones that leave no trace. One obvious possibility in a case like this, with young victims in a ritual context, is strangulation. It's quick, it's effective, and historically it was used in many cultures for ritual sacrifice. Strangulation can be done with bare hands or with a cord, a rope, a piece of fabric. But strangulation always leaves evidence, always. The hyoid bone in the throat is very fragile. It breaks easily under pressure, and the soft tissues of the neck, they show bruising, hemorrhaging. He examines the CT scans of all three children's necks, looking for any sign, any indication. I can see the hyoid bone clearly. It's intact, no fractures, no displacement, and the surrounding tissues, no damage whatsoever. He checks the larynx, the complex group of cartilages that form the voice box.
These structures are very delicate. In strangulation cases, you almost always see compression fractures, crushed cartilage. But here, everything is present and uninjured. The children weren't strangled. Their deaths remain a mystery, but the investigation isn't over. Because according to Spanish chronicles, there was another method of sacrifice used by the Inca, one that's almost too horrible to contemplate. Burial, burying children alive, sealing them in tombs, letting them suffocate in the darkness. Some of the early Spanish accounts mention this. Children placed in underground chambers, the entrance sealed, left to die slowly. Dr. Marcelo Parada, the mountain rescue specialist, has seen this type of death before. Not in ancient burials, but in avalanche victims. I've recovered bodies of people who were buried in snow, trapped, unable to breathe. They died from asphyxiation after being buried for hours. The mechanism is simple but terrifying. When you're buried, you exhale carbon dioxide. But because you're in an enclosed space, that carbon dioxide builds up around you. You inhale it, exhale more, inhale it again. Eventually your blood CO2 levels become toxic. You lose consciousness. You die. And there are telltale signs. People buried alive. They struggle instinctively. They claw at whatever's trapping them. And often bears vomiting. The body's response to oxygen deprivation and panic. Bam Mitch petition demo. Medeo wealthy. Ferris, Forces, and Dovnars. It's a La Niña del Rayo has vomit on her lips. Could she have been buried alive? When someone's buried alive and struggling, there's always evidence in the burial itself. Disturbed soil, scratch marks, and on the body, damage to the hands, broken fingernails, abraded skin. Dr. Wilson zooms in on the children's hands in the CT scans, looking for defensive injuries, signs of struggle. I'm examining their fingers very carefully. The nail beds, the soft tissue of the fingertips, looking for any indication that they were clawing, scratching, trying to escape. La Doncella's hands are perfect. Fingernails smooth and intact. No scratches, no abrasions. Her hands are positioned peacefully, one over the other, folded in her lap. The same is true for El Niño. And even La Niña del Rayo, despite the vomit, shows no signs of struggle. Looking at the evidence, I don't see any indication that these children were buried alive. No struggle. No defensive wounds. Nothing. Dr. Reinhardt was one of the first people to see the burial chamber, to enter it after it was sealed 500 years ago. And he remembers everything. The chamber was small,
baby 6 feet by 6 feet. Stone walls, a roof made of stone slabs. But inside, everything was undisturbed. The offerings were arranged carefully. Ceramics positioned just so, figurines facing specific directions. Boom. Textiles folded neatly. There was no sense of chaos, no sense of panic. Everything looked intentional, deliberate. The children themselves were seated, posed. La doncella. Her hands were folded. Her legs were crossed. Her head was tilted forward slightly. If someone struggling for air, fighting for their life, would they be positioned like this?
It doesn't seem likely. If she was buried alive and aware,
She would have moved, shifted, tried to escape. The soil around her would have been disturbed, but it wasn't. Everything was exactly as it had been placed. There. So if not live burial, how did they die? Dr. Reinhardt looks back at the excavation photographs, studies them again with fresh eyes, and he sees something he didn't fully appreciate before.
One of the first things they had to remove from La Doncella's body was a thick woolen textile.
A blanket or a shawl. It was wrapped around her head, completely covering her face, knotted at the back. At the time, he thought it was just part of her burial clothing, protection from the cold, or a ceremonial shroud. But now, looking back, I wonder if it was the murder weapon. Think about it. A thick cloth wrapped around your face, covering your nose and mouth. At 22,100 feet, where the air already contains half the oxygen of sea level. Once you have cloth wrapped tightly over your face, blocking your airway, at that altitude, you'd lose consciousness in minutes. Maybe seconds. And if you were already heavily intoxicated, already sedated with alcohol and coca, already confused and unable to resist, you wouldn't struggle.
You might not even realize what was happening. Doctor
Privigliano, the high-altitude specialist, agrees. At extreme altitude, your respiratory system is already compromised. You're gasping for air constantly. Add a physical obstruction over your nose and mouth, and you'd suffocate very quickly. He's seen similar deaths in his work. Climbers who accidentally covered their faces with their jackets or sleeping bags. There's a documented case from Everest. A climber who pulled his jacket over his face to block the wind. He was exhausted, hypoxic, and he just never woke up. The jacket blocked his breathing, but because he was so depleted, so exhausted, he didn't struggle. He just died. The same could have happened to the children, especially if they were intoxicated. There's a point where alcohol and drugs compromise your brain function so severely that you wouldn't even react to suffocation. Your survival instincts are shut down. Perhaps the coca and chicha were administered specifically for this purpose, to ease their passing, to make death gentle. In a situation of extreme low oxygen combined with high altitude effects, combined with drugs, combined with a physical obstruction, death would come very quickly. Peacefully. They would simply fall asleep. Dr. Wilson weighs all the evidence one final time. The lack of trauma, the lack of defensive wounds, the presence of textiles wrapped around their heads, the extremely high drug levels, and he delivers his final assessment, his professional opinion. Having considered all of the facts, examined all of the evidence, I believe suffocation is the most likely cause of death for these children. Gentle suffocation, while under the influence of coca and alcohol, at extreme altitude. I don't think they suffered. I don't think they were aware. The drugs would have made everything hazy, dream-like. They would have felt themselves drifting, and then nothing. For 500 years, these 3 Inca children have kept the secret of how they died. Now, the truth is revealed. Quiet suffocation to send them to the gods. Based on their facial expressions, especially La Doncella, bad. Don't see pain. I see peace, which suggests the drugs did their job. She wasn't aware. Dr. Previliano adds his perspective. I don't think she suffered. The alcohol alone would have isolated her from her environment, made everything distant, unreal. Combined with coca and altitude, she probably didn't feel anything. It's the kindest interpretation, the one everyone wants to believe. That these children, in their final moments, felt no pain, no fear, just sleep. But Dr. Corthals isn't entirely convinced. We want to believe they died peacefully. We want to believe they weren't afraid. But the vomit on the 7-year-old's lips, the ground down teeth from stress, these suggest fear, real fear. She looks at La Niña del Rayo's frozen face, the open mouth, the expression that could be a scream. Maybe the youngest ones didn't understand. Maybe the drugs worked better on them. But the 13-year-old, La Doncella, she was old enough to know, to understand what was happening. Did she know she was about to die? Did she accept it? Or did some part of her, deep down, want to fight it? We'll never know what she was thinking in those final moments. We can't read her mind, but we can't honor her memory. We can tell her story. We can make sure she's not forgotten. When the Inca offered these children to the mountain gods, they believed the children would live forever, eternally young, forever sacred, immortalized in their glorious sacrifice. And in a strange way, they were right. These children have become immortal, not in the way the Inca imagined, but through science, through history, through the millions of people who visit them and remember them. The Museum of High Altitude Archaeology receives over 100,000 visitors per year, people from all over the world, all coming to see the children. Some people cry, some people get angry, some people just stand there in silence. But everyone who sees them is affected, changed somehow. Dr. Cerruti has spent years caring for these children, studying them, protecting them, and she's formed a bond, an emotional connection. Bah! I choose to think of them as sacred, that their deaths meant something to their people, that they believed they were saving the empire, ensuring good harvests, bringing rain, protecting their families. She pauses. Maybe that belief gave them courage. Maybe it gave them peace. I want to believe that. It's what she needs to believe, because the alternative is too heartbreaking. The alternative is 3 terrified children, drugged, carried to a mountaintop, suffocated, and left to freeze. I prefer to think of La Doncella as she was meant to be seen, as a goddess, an offering, someone who sacrificed herself for the greater good. Claudio, the Andean spiritual leader, agrees in our cosmology. These children became Apus, mountain spirits. They watch over us now, protect us. When we make offerings to the mountains, we're speaking to them. It's a worldview that transforms tragedy into meaning, death into divinity. They didn't die, they were transformed, elevated. They became part of the sacred landscape, part of the mountains themselves. Whether you believe that or not, whether you see them as victims or as willing participants in a religious ceremony, one thing is certain. These 3 children, frozen in time, have given us an extraordinary gift, a window into a lost world, a civilization that left no written records, a culture that was destroyed by conquest and disease. Without them, we would know so much less about the Inca, about their religion, their beliefs, their capabilities. The fact that they carried a 6-year-old to 22,100 feet in the 1400s tells us the Inca were capable of things we barely thought possible. The preservation of their bodies tells us about high-altitude mummification. Their hair chemistry tells us about their diet, their health, their final year of life. The artifacts tell us about Inca craftsmanship, trade networks, religious practices. They are in death, teaching us things they could never have taught us in life. And they continue to reveal secrets, new technologies, new analysis techniques. Every few years, scientists discover something new. In 2019, Genetic analysis revealed information about their ancestry, where their families came from, their ethnic background. In 2022, new chemical analysis found traces of ayahuasca, a powerful hallucinogenic plant, in La Doncella's system. Every time we study them, we learn something new. They're a gift that keeps giving. But they're more than just scientific specimens. Dhamma, they're more than just data points. They're children, real children who lived real lives, who laughed and played and had hopes and dreams, who were loved by their families, who were afraid in their final hours. Or maybe who were brave, who believed they were doing something important, something sacred. That's what I want people to remember. Not just the science, not just the preservation, but the humanity. These were real people. They deserve our respect, our compassion. Dr. Corthals places her hand on La Doncella's cryogenic chamber. I tell her I'm sorry for what happened to her, for what her people did. But also, I thank her for everything she's taught us, for the window she's given us into her world. It's a strange relationship. Caring for someone who's been dead for 500 years, feeling protective of a mummy. But everyone who works with these children feels it. They get under your skin, into your heart. You can't help but care about them. That, perhaps, is the most important legacy of all. Not the scientific discoveries, not the archaeological insights, but the reminder that even across 500 years, across vast cultural differences, across the gulf between life and death, we can still recognize each other's humanity. We can still feel compassion. We can still care. That's what makes us human. The ability to look at a child from a completely different world, a completely different time, and feel that connection, that empathy. These 3 children, frozen on a mountaintop, preserved by accident, and discovered by chance, bridged a gap we thought unbridgeable. They've connected the Inca Empire to the modern world, the past to the present, the dead to the living. And in doing so, they've become truly immortal, not as gods, but as symbols of what we've lost. Symbols of what we've learned, and symbols of the unbreakable thread that connects all humans across all time. Expansion section. Insert after batch. 6. The Museum of High Altitude Archaeology in Salta wasn't built casually. It was the result of years of planning, debate, and controversy. When Dr. Reinhardt first discovered the 3 children in 1999, he faced an immediate question. What do you do with them? The easy answer would have been to leave them where they were, on the mountain, undisturbed. But leaving them there, they would have been looted, destroyed. They needed to be preserved. So the decision was made to bring them down, to excavate the burial site, to remove the children and their artifacts. Was a massive undertaking. At 22,100 feet, every movement is exhausting. Carrying equipment up there, setting up a proper excavation, documenting everything, it took weeks. We had to work in shifts because of the altitude. They built a temporary freezer on the mountain, powered by generators that carried up piece by piece. We couldn't let the bodies warm up, not even for a few hours. So we excavated them in sections, placing each piece immediately into the freezer. The whole operation cost over $300,000. Funded by National Geographic. And when they finally brought the children down, dark packed in custom freezer units, trucked across the Andes, the question became where to put them. Argentina wanted them, obviously. They were found on Argentine soil, but there were ethical questions, cultural questions. Should they be in a museum at all? Indigenous groups, particularly those who identify as descendants of the Inca, were divided. Some wanted the children reburied. They said it was desecration, disturbing the dead. These children were placed on the mountain as offerings. Taking them away, putting them on display, that's not what was intended. Others argued for preservation and study. These children are part of our history. Police hearing. Our heritage, studying them, learning from them, that's honoring them, not desecrating them. The debate raged for years. I was called a grave robber, a thief. People said I was no better than the Spanish conquistadors who looted Inca tombs for gold. Dr. Reinhardt still gets angry mail, even now, 25 years later.
But here's what I believe. These children have a story.
And if we don't tell it, who will? If we rebury them, seal them away, that story is lost forever. The Museum of High Altitude Archaeology was designed specifically to address these concerns. We don't treat these children like curiosities, like objects. This entire design of the museum is built around respect. Visitors enter through a darkened hallway. Quiet, solemn. There's no flash photography allowed. No loud noises. We want people to approach the children with reverence, not spectacle.
The children are displayed one at a time, rotated every few months.
We don't show all three together. That would be overwhelming. And it would increase their exposure to light and temperature changes. Each child remains in their cryogenic capsule, visible through thick glass. Temperature maintained at -4 degrees Fahrenheit. The capsules are state-of-the-art, better than what most scientific laboratories have. We monitor temperature, humidity, even vibrations, 24 hours a day.
And there are strict rules about viewing. Children under 12 aren't allowed to see the mummies. It's too intense.
Too disturbing. We've had instances where young children have nightmares after seeing them. Even adults need to be prepared. Before entering the display room, there's a video, a warning, explaining what you're about to see, giving people a chance to opt out. About 20% of visitors choose not to enter. They look at the artifacts instead, the textiles, the ceramics, the figurines. And that's fine. That's absolutely fine. Not everyone needs to see the children to appreciate their story. For those who do enter, the experience is profound. I've watched thousands of people see La Doncella for the first time, and the reaction is almost always the same. Silence, shock, and then tears. There's something about seeing her face, her perfect preservation. The fact that she looks like she might wake up, it breaks through your defenses, your intellectual understanding that this happened 500 years ago. Your brain sees a dead child, and your heart breaks. The museum has guest books, places where visitors can write their reactions. We've collected thousands of entries, and reading them, it's overwhelming. People pour their hearts out. Some entries are angry. How could they do this to children? How could anyone justify this? Some are philosophical. What right do we have to judge another culture? Who are we to impose our values on the past? Some are heartbreaking. I'm so sorry this happened to you. I'm sorry no one saved you. And some are grateful. Thank you for preserving their story. Thank you for making sure they're not forgotten. Dr. Corthals reads every entry. Every single one. Part of my responsibility. These visitors, they're entrusting me with their reactions, their emotions. The least I can do is witness them. She's noticed patterns over the years. Women often cry more than men, parents especially. Anyone who has children of their own. They imagine their own kids in that position. Some visitors ask to be alone with the children, to pray, to meditate, to process what they're seeing. We allow it. We have meditation rooms, quiet spaces where people can sit and reflect. Some people spend hours there. Religious groups sometimes protest the museum. Catholic organizations, evangelical churches.
They say we're celebrating paganism, endorsing human sacrifice.
But that's not what this is about. This is about history, about truth. The museum makes no moral judgments. We present the facts. We explain the cultural context. But we don't say whether Capachocha was right or wrong. We let visitors decide for themselves, because there are no easy answers. Is it wrong to study these children? Is it wrong to display them? I've asked myself these questions 1,000 times, and I still don't know. Some indigenous activists want the children returned to the mountain. They say that's where they belong, where they chose to go, where they became sacred. But others argue that the mountain is no longer sacred. It's a tourist destination now. Climbers summit it every year. There's garbage up there. Empty oxygen canisters, human waste. Returning the children to that's not honoring them. The museum represents a compromise. We keep them preserved, protected, available for study, but also treated with dignity, with respect, and the research continues. Every few years, new technologies allow for new discoveries. In 2018, micro-CT scanning revealed details about their internal organs. We could see the structure of La Doncella's heart, her lungs, all perfectly preserved. It was extraordinary. In 2020, chemical analysis of their clothing revealed dyes from plants that went extinct shortly after Spanish conquest. These textiles are the only surviving examples of those dye techniques. Without preserving these children, that knowledge would have been lost forever. And in 2023, DNA analysis revealed family connections. We discovered that El Niño and La Niña del Rayo, the two younger children, they were siblings, brother and sister, which adds another layer to the tragedy. They died together, buried together. Perhaps they held hands in their final moments. We'll never know. But knowing they were siblings, it makes it even harder to process. Dr. Corthels has children of her own. 2 daughters. And I think about them when I look at these mummies. I think, what if it was my daughter? What if someone took my child and I can't even finish the thought? It's why she's so protective of them. These children, they have no one else, no family to speak for them, no culture to defend them. The Inca Empire's gone, so we, the museum staff, we're all they have. She checks on them every day, even on her days off. Come in, just to make sure the temperatures are stable, that everything's functioning. It's probably overkill. We have monitoring systems, alarms. But I need to see for myself. Have you ever felt responsible for something precious? Something irreplaceable? That weight on your shoulders. That fear that something might go wrong. That's what Dr. Bridge Corthels lives with. If something happened to these children on my watch, if the cooling system failed, if there was a fire or an earthquake, I would never forgive myself. The museum has emergency protocols. If the power fails, we have backup generators. If those fail, we have battery-powered cooling units. If those fail, we can move the children to a hospital or research facility within 2 hours. Boo! They run drills, practice scenarios. Every staff member knows exactly what to do. We've timed it. We can evacuate all 3 children in under 30 minutes if needed. It's never been needed, but the fear is always there. These children survived 500 years on a mountain. It would be unforgivable if they were destroyed in a museum. The museum also faces financial challenges. Maintaining these cryogenic systems, it's expensive. Electricity costs alone are over $50,000 per year. And that's just to keep them frozen. Bridge kind burst. Research costs more, conservation costs more. We rely on admission fees, donations, government grants, but it's never enough. There's always something that needs funding. Yet the museum persists, because what we're preserving, it's priceless. You can't put a value on it. These children, they're unique in the entire world, and they continue to teach us about the Inca, about human sacrifice, about the extremes humans will go to for their beliefs. Every time I look at La Doncella, I'm reminded of how much we've lost. The Inca Empire at its height, 12 million people, one of the greatest civilizations in human history. And now, gone, destroyed. All that remains are ruins. Fragmentary records written by their conquerors, and 3 frozen children on a mountaintop. That's why this work matters. That's why we do it, not to glorify human sacrifice, dying to celebrate the past, but to remember it, to learn from it, and to make sure these children, who gave everything, are never forgotten. But the story of these 3 children doesn't end with how they died, because hidden in their perfectly preserved bodies, frozen in their blood, their tissue, their very DNA, is another mystery, one that scientists are only beginning to understand. One that challenges everything we thought we knew about human history. In 2007, when researchers first performed genetic analysis on La Doncella, they expected to find typical South American DNA markers, indigenous ancestry, the genetic signatures of people who'd lived in the Andes for thousands of years. And they did find that, but they found something else too. Something unexpected, something that shouldn't exist. When they analyzed her blood type, running multiple tests to confirm, they discovered La Doncella had a rare blood marker that's found almost exclusively in European populations.
We ran the tests 3 times.
We thought it was contamination, but it wasn't.
The marker was there, in her 500-year-old blood.
Rh negative blood, specifically a variant that's almost never found in indigenous South American populations. In modern South American populations, Rh negative blood occurs in less than 2% of people. It's extremely rare. But in La Doncella, There it was. Rh negative blood has puzzled scientists for decades. It appears suddenly in the human population about 35,000 years ago, mostly in Europe, particularly in the Basque region of Spain, where up to 35% of the population carries the Rh negative factor. But its origins are a mystery. We don't know where it came from. We don't know why it appeared. And we don't know why it's distributed the way it is. Some researchers believe it's evidence of ancient migrations we don't know about, lost populations, forgotten peoples who traveled between continents thousands of years before we thought it was possible. Others have proposed more controversial theories. There are researchers who believe Rh negative blood is evidence of something else entirely, something that would rewrite human history. And now, finding it in a 50-year-old Inca girl raises even more questions. Was La Doncella part of a bloodline we didn't know existed in South America? Was there contact between European and South American populations thousands of years before Columbus? Or is Rh negative blood evidence of something even more ancient? Something that goes back to the very origins of humanity itself? The discovery opened up a whole new line of investigation. We started looking at other ancient remains, other mummies, other burial sites. And what we found? Oh, it's extraordinary. Wilson pulls up a map, dots marking locations where Rh negative blood has been found in ancient remains. Europe, obviously, but also Egypt, the Middle East, Central Asia, and now South America. There's a pattern here, a distribution that suggests ancient populations we know nothing about, migrations that happened before recorded history. Some of the Rh negative individuals found in ancient burial sites were clearly important people, royalty, priests, leaders. In ancient Egypt, many of the pharaohs tested positive for Rh negative blood. Tutankhamun, Akhenaten, Ramses II. The royal bloodline. The same pattern appears in Europe. Royal families, noble lineages. There's something about Rh negative blood that seems to be associated with power, with leadership, with being chosen for important roles. Just like La Doncella, a girl selected for the highest religious honor, a virgin of the sun. Blade, an offering to the gods. Was she chosen because of her bloodline? Because of something in her DNA that made her special? The questions multiply. The mystery deepens. And hidden in these ancient bloodlines, frozen in the DNA of mummies and preserved remains, might be the answers to humanity's greatest enigmas. Where did we come from? How did we spread across the globe? Were there advanced civilizations before recorded history? And is there something in our blood, our very genetic code, that we've forgotten? Something that ancient peoples knew, but we've lost? Every time we think we understand human history, we find something that challenges everything. The Rh negative blood mystery is one of those things.
La Doncella.
This 13-year-old girl, frozen on a mountaintop, may hold keys to unlocking it. Her blood, her DNA, her genetic legacy.
We're still analyzing her remains, still finding new information.
And every discovery raises 10 new questions. If you want to know what scientists discovered about Rh negative blood in ancient populations, if you want to understand why this bloodline appears in royal families across the world,
If you want to explore the theories, some mainstream,
some controversial about where this genetic marker came from and what it means, you need to watch what happens next. The mystery of Rh negative blood in ancient history. Because what researchers found in La Doncella's blood and in the blood of other ancient mummies might be the key to understanding one of humanity's most profound mysteries. Who are we? Where did we come from?
And what secrets are written in our DNA? The answers,
Frozen in time for thousands of years, are finally being revealed. Don't miss it. Blink is on your screen. The mystery continues. The discovery of these 3 children changed archaeology forever. Before 1990, before La Doncella, the idea of finding perfectly preserved Capacocha victims was just a theory. Something mentioned in Spanish chronicles. Rumors. Legends. We knew the Inca practiced human sacrifice. The chronicles were clear about that. But finding actual evidence, actual bodies, that was different. Now we have proof. Not just one child, but dozens scattered across the high peaks of the Andes, each one a window into the past, each one a tragedy frozen in time. These children, they're the closest thing we have to time travel. When you look at La Doncella's face, you're looking at someone who lived 500 years ago, really seeing them. Not reconstructed, not imagined. And the discoveries continue. Every year, somewhere in the Andes, another peak is climbed, another ancient site is found. I believe there are more children up there. Many more. We've only scratched the surface. Climate change is making these discoveries more common. As glaciers melt, as permafrost thaws, bodies that have been hidden for centuries are being revealed. It's a race against time. Because once they're exposed, once they start to thaw, deterioration happens fast. We need to find them. Preserve them before they're lost. Dr. Corthal's worries about the future. What happens in 50 years? 100 years? Will these children still be preserved? Will the museum still exist? Will anyone still care? She's training the next generation. Young conservators, archaeologists. Someone needs to carry this forward. Someone needs to keep telling their story long after I'm gone.
Because these 3 children frozen on a volcano have become more than just mummies.
They become symbols. Symbols of a lost empire. Symbols of religious devotion taken to its extreme. Symbols of childhood innocence sacrificed for beliefs we can barely understand. They remind us that humans, we're capable of both incredible beauty and terrible cruelty, sometimes simultaneously, sometimes in the same act. The Inca created Machu Picchu, and they killed children on mountaintops. Both are true. Both matter. That's the complexity of history. It's never simple, never clean, never just good or just bad. And these children, with their peaceful faces and their tragic stories, force us to confront that complexity, to sit with the uncomfortable truth. That great civilizations, beautiful cultures, can do terrible things, and that understanding why, learning from it, is the only way we honor the victims. La Doncella deserves better than to be forgotten, better than to be dismissed as just another mummy. She was a person, a child, with thoughts and feelings and dreams. Dreams she never got to fulfill. But because she was chosen, selected, bad, sacrificed for gods we no longer believe in, for an empire that no longer exists, for a purpose that died with her. That's the tragedy. All of it. The journey, the ceremony, the death. It was for nothing. The Inca Empire fell anyway. The Spanish came anyway. And 3 children died on a mountain for beliefs that couldn't save them. But their deaths weren't completely in vain. Because 500 years later, we're still talking about them. Still learning from them. Still feeling for them. They achieved a kind of immortality, just not the kind the Inca intended. Not as gods, but as teachers, as witnesses, bridges between the ancient world and ours. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's their legacy. Not divine power, but human connection across time, across culture, across the insurmountable gap of death itself. When you stand in front of La Doncella's cryogenic chamber, when you see her face through the glass, when you really look at her, you're not seeing a mummy. You're seeing a child, a real child who lived and breathed and felt, who climbed a mountain, who chewed coca leaves, who was afraid, and who died anyway. And that is worth remembering forever.